All right, so um, this is not a scripted video, and I'm mainly just kind of making this um, about half an hour to 45 minutes after first reading about this whole story that I'm about to get into. Um, and before I do that, I just want to first of all say um, that my wife and I are both excuse me, we're both uh, alumni of Linfield College, or I guess Linfield University as it's been rebranded. Um, I graduated in 2014. My wife graduated the year after that. We met there. Pretty much all the people in our close friend group are from Linfield. You know, and I wouldn't anyone who knows me wouldn't consider me to be the type of person to go to all the football games and buy the Linfield merch and wear all the T-shirts with the Wildcat on it and that it's not. I'm not the type of person who just like hates everything. um, it's more just like that's just not something that ever occurred to me to do. So, and all that being said, like I didn't. I was glad that I went to Linfield, and I was I'm glad for the experiences that I had there, and obviously I met the woman who is now my wife at Linfield, and so obviously that's something that I couldn't possibly hope to replicate somewhere else. You know, if I had the option to turn back time and go to a different school, I wouldn't take that option. I'd still go to Linfield because mainly of the fact of all the friendships and relationships that I made there, and the fact that I met my wife there. So um, so up until now, I wouldn't say that I was like overly like, oh, go Wildcats, that type of person, but I was always proud of the history of my school and the programs they had there, and the kind of students that and graduates that the school turned out. They had a fantastic nursing program, and obviously they were fairly well known in the area for their football players. Um, but even then, I never imagined that I would have to or feel the need to make a video about something like this. For people who are watching this, I should probably give a trigger warning that I'm going to kind of talk about themes of sexual assault, sexual abuse, and claims of anti-Semitism, um, just general xenophobia. So if that is something that you would prefer to not hear about, um, probably shouldn't watch this video. So, all right. So I'm just going to kind of get into it. And so this is a Twitter thread that was posted uh, 3 days ago, March 29th. Today is April 1st. Um, and it was written by a Linfield professor who, um, as far as I know, has been a professor at Linfield for a long time. Um, he was teaching there pretty much the whole time that I was there, um, and as far as I know, he's I hope he's still there. I hope he hasn't been sacked because of this, but you know that unfortunately wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. at this point, I don't really have any reason to not believe the things that he's saying. But I guess like everything in life, you should probably take it with at least a tiny, 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 tiny grain of salt because, I mean, for me, this hasn't all been confirmed yet. But I still think that it is something that really needs to be talked about. This professor writes the following. The moment I knew that nothing would come of my claims that the Linfield University president and board chair had religiously harassed me was when I went to the head of HR and she said, quote, "Personally, I don't believe the Jews have a secret agenda to grab power at all," unquote. The head of HR told me that she had a Jewish neighbor who was the nicest man, and he would never try to grab power or anything like that. I had gone to HR because, as the faculty trustee, parentheses, and as far as I knew, the only openly Jewish trustee, end parentheses, on the Linfield board, I had reported that 4 Linfield University trustees were accused of sexual misconduct by students and faculty over the past year. That's more than 10% of the board. 3 of those trustees are still on the board. Just to be clear, I was following the primary definition of sexual misconduct according to Linfield University policy. Quote, "Any intentional sexual touching, however slight, with any object or body part by any person upon any other person without consent," end quote. And he includes a link to to a copy of the policy. He goes on to say, "It turned out that one of the Linfield University trustees, David Jubb, had previously been accused of sexually assaulting 3 students. Jubb remained on the board. The chair was supposed to keep Jubb away from students and alcohol. He didn't. The student trustee on the Linfield University board, said that Jubb then sexually assaulted her. After she filed a lawsuit, all the other allegations started to come to light." And he goes on to say, "I told the Linfield University board chair that we needed to think proactively about sexual harassment training and guidelines for proper trustee behavior. To my surprise, the chair accused me, a Jewish trustee, of harboring a secret agenda to grab power. The chair told me that the Linfield University board never had a problem until I became a trustee. The chair told me that if I really cared about sexual misconduct, I would be going after the faculty, who, he said, were the true predators. Then the president withheld my report to the board. He told me that I was putting Linfield University at risk by reporting claims of sexual misconduct. The president threatened me with personal liability. Having previously made comments to me about measuring the size of Jewish noses, the Linfield University president also said that people like me were overreacting to the appearance of swastikas on campus. Finally, the president said that people like me were destroying Linfield University from within and could only show loyalty by accepting the teachings of Jesus Christ in the New Testament." Side note, Linfield University is a religious university. It's, as far as I know, I think it's affiliated with the First United Baptist Church. He goes on to say, "That's when I went to HR. I also reported the president's and chair's comments to the full Linfield University board. They censored my report and told me that I could not raise these issues outside of confidential executive sessions. Then they banned me from executive sessions. The board's lawyer threatened me with public humiliation if I continued to report sexual misconduct by Linfield trustees. Then the chair sent an open letter to the entire Linfield University community calling me, quote, shameful, unquote, and, quote, malicious, unquote. And he includes a copy of that letter. He goes on to say, the Linfield University Faculty Assembly passed a vote of no confidence in the chair of the board. The board dismissed it. The Faculty Executive Council wrote a letter detailing the board's repeated abuses of power. The board dismissed it. At their next meeting after the Faculty Assembly's vote of no confidence, the Linfield University Board abolished the Faculty Assembly. Students protested. They were ignored. I asked the board to adopt an anti-retaliation policy. The board refused. Independent investigations substantiated the allegations against Linfield University trustees, but we were told that no Linfield policy was violated. Since the president's comments about Jewish noses occurred in private, they couldn't be substantiated. I've just learned that the Linfield University Board now intends to get rid of the faculty and student trustees. They also plan to renew the president's contract and re-elect the same chair who failed to protect students from trustees accused of sexual assault. That's the same chair who accused me of a secret agenda to grab power. The same chair whom HR was told they could not investigate because he is technically not a Linfield University employee. The same chair who has refused to permit an independent review of the president. That's the same chair who told me he wasn't going to make Linfield University trustees become, quote-unquote, Puritans just because students and faculty didn't want to be touched. The same chair who said a female trustee's concern was, quote, an emotional reaction uninformed by current needs, unquote. I have previously declined to speak publicly about what I've experienced because the board said I couldn't. I'm afraid that the board will respond by further punishing my students and colleagues who have far less institutional privilege at Linfield University than I do. But the damage is already underway, and it breaks my heart when students ask me what they can do if they're upset about what's happening at Linfield University. They often ask me if it's safe for them to report their concerns to the president and the board. I wish I could reassure them. I wish I could tell my students that it's safe for them to go to the president and the board. But I can't. I know firsthand that retaliation at Linfield University is real. That's why I'm speaking out now, because the Linfield University president and board will continue to abuse their power until someone with more authority stops them. And that's the end of the thread. That's a lot to process. I briefly skimmed over this thread prior to filming this video. But now that just now reading it out loud, the magnitude of the whole situation is kind of just now hitting me. Assuming that everything that this professor says is true, then the situation that exists at Linfield right now is that there is a board of trustees and a president of the university. The people who are exercising authority over pretty much the entire university and all its campuses, uh, are protecting each other from facing any sort of repercussions um, for abuse against against other people, against students. And as someone who was a student at Linfield and who went to school with people who are obviously still now friends, um, and one of whom I married. The majority of these friends are female, and I guess all things considered, I guess it's a good thing it wasn't any of them that this happened to. But the fact that it's happening to anyone at all at this university where I got uh, my bachelor's of music, where I met my future wife. Sometimes my wife and I would drive down there. We live about an hour away. We'd drive down there and just walk around and kind of reminisce about all the positive memories, all the wholesome memories that we had of that place. And now I feel like all that stuff is tainted. This all these events, all this stuff that is coming out now, uh, has pretty much guaranteed that I will never ever have pride in Linfield University. And I will never recommend that anyone go there. I will never recommend that anyone spend a dime to send their child there, especially if that child is female. Because if this is the kind of stuff that is going on behind closed doors and with no accountability, no transparency, and the moment that a person with some status at this university tries to speak up about it, there are attempts made to silence them and to humiliate them and to immediately close in and protect each other from any sort of ramifications, legal or otherwise, but especially legal. Then all I feel is all I can feel is just shame and anger, honestly. It could have happened to my wife. It could have happened to any of our friends. Luckily, it didn't. But it could have. And it could still continue to happen until something changes, until there is accountability. I can't even believe that it would be considered bold in the year 2021 to take a stance against sexual predators, against sexual assault, against sexual abuse, against abuse of any kind, against bigotry of all things. Until there is leadership at Linfield that is willing to get their hands dirty and disavow all of this stuff and admit to the wrongdoings of current and past leadership and put its foot down and say, we will not allow this to happen again. And this is our plan for making sure it doesn't happen again. And by the way, we want to make sure that our faculty, our hired staff, our employees, and our students can feel comfortable coming to us with these kinds of issues in confidence and feel that they will be addressed. I just feel nothing but shame right now. I regret saying to my parents, "Hey, let's spend our money here." And I know that, all this stuff still needs to be substantiated, and it's without transparency, it's hard to know 100% who to believe and all of that stuff. But at this point in time, if we're still doubting the the claims of alleged victims of sexual abuse and assault and bigotry in 2021, then clearly we've learned nothing. I really hope that people who watch this understand that none of this is okay. And I really hope that there is some justice that happens.